Hi, and today's topic is solving equations with variables on both sides. Our goal for today is to solve equations with variables on both sides. Alright, the main thing that you want to get here is these, what is it, a flow map right here, sequence map. So make sure that this is written down somewhere, and you can always use it to refer to. So let's start with the first one, solving equations with variables on both sides, just basic. So here we have 8x plus 2 is equal to 6x plus 10. Our first step here is to combine like terms. Nothing to combine. We cannot combine these because the constants do not have the same type of variables. Our second step here is we're going to look for any sort of distributive property. Nothing to distribute. So our third step here, let's go to isolating the variable. Since we have variables on both sides, we're going to isolate them. I'm going to look for the smaller variable to move over. So if you look right here, I have an 8x and a 6x. So I want the variable only on one side. So I'm going to get rid of the variable on its own. So I'm going to subtract 6x. On this side, that gets rid of it here. But according to the property of equality, I have to go ahead and subtract 6x over here. It kind of balances out the equation. What you got to do here, you have to do here on that equal sign. 8x minus 6x is going to give me 2x. Again, I'm going to bring down everything else that has not been worked on. Now what I have here is I have 2x plus 2 is equal to 10. My next step here is to, since we're done isolating the variable on one side, we're going to solve for plus or minus. I'm going to undo adding 2 by subtracting 2. If I subtract 2 here, I get to subtract 2 here. And again, I'm keeping things balanced. So all I have left here is I have 2x is equal to 10 minus 2 is going to give me 8. And that's going to give me a one-step equation. At this point here, I'm going to solve for either multiplication or division. Since it's a multiplying question right now, I'm going to undo multiplying by doing the inverse of it, by dividing by 2. Divided by 2 on both sides, again, keeping things balanced. I now have 1 times x is equal to x. 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4. The final step here is to take this and plug it in into either here or here and see if it makes sense. Alright, next, let's go ahead and use a much different type of problem, where we now have a couple of things that we have to do first before we actually get into our final steps here. So here I have p minus 1 is equal to 5p plus 3p minus 8. So again, we're going to go ahead and look at our steps. Our first step is to look for any like terms. I see the 2 like terms right here. I'm going to go ahead and circle them. And again, notice that I am taking the plus sign with that particular term because it lets me know that it is a positive. So I'm going to add these guys together, and that's going to be 5 plus 3, and that's going to give me 8p minus 8, because that's the next term that I did not work on, is equal to p minus 1. Now I have, again, variables on both sides. I want to put them on either this side or this side. Now, what you want to think about here is you want to think about what would be a smarter choice to work on. Should I subtract 8p here, subtract it here, which would give me a negative, or should I subtract p here and subtract p here, which would give me a positive p? At this point, I'm going to choose to subtract the p here. So if I subtract p here, subtract p on this side, I'm now left with a minus 1. On this side, I'm going to subtract that, and that's going to give me 8 minus p, And what I want you to remember is you are subtracting here. Imagine that there is a 1 because the p is actually there, so which you're subtracting. So you have 8 of these and you're subtracting 1 of them, you now have 7 of them left. So 7p minus 8. Then secondly, I have minus 8. I'm going to go ahead and add 8 to both sides to undo this problem. So if I add 8 to here, add 8 to here, that's gone. This now gives me 7 positive is equal to 7p. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it over here. 7 is equal to 7p. That at this point becomes a very, very easy problem to work on. So I have here, divide by 7, divide both sides by 7, p is equal to 1. Alright, let's take one where I have a different type of variable on this side where it's a negative variable. So here, same thing. I'm going to combine like terms if I can. Secondly, I'm going to distribute property. And third, I'm going to isolate. Now, I can pretty much skip the first two just because there's nothing for me to combine. There's no distributive property. So I'm going to go ahead and isolate my variable. So here, I have a positive a and a negative 5a. Again, smarter choice here would be to add 5a, just because that, when I put it on this side, is going to give me a positive number. So that's gone. On this side, I have negative 7. On this side, I still have to add that 5a. Now, if I already have an a here, if I add 5 to it, I'm going to have 6a. And then I just brought down the plus 5, the constant. My next step here is just to finish along the two-step operations, or equations. So I'm going to subtract 5, both sides again. Here I have 6a, because 5 minus 5 is 0. Here I have negative 12. Now this part right here, please be very careful. If you write it out, it actually looks like this. Negative 7 minus 5, or negative 7 plus negative 5. Either way, it's still going to give you a negative 12. And our final step here is to divide both sides by 6, and a is equal to negative 2. Alright, now our second one. Solving equations with variables on both sides and distributive property. So this is where our distributive property comes in. So let's go ahead and first of all distribute. So I'm going to distribute the 2 to the 4x, and that's going to give me 8x. I'm going to now distribute the 2 because when you talk about distributive property, you're actually taking this and distributing to all the terms inside. And that's already a minus 3, so that's 2 times of subtracting 3 twice, or negative 3. That gives me negative 6. Then I'm just going to rewrite everything else that was not used. And again, I'm still working on these guys right here. Like terms, distributive property. Our next step here, I do see 2 things that I can like terms. And again, notice that I did circle the minus signs in front, or the negative signs in front. That now becomes 8x, and that's negative 14, or minus 14. Now, we can isolate our variable. I see these 2 right here. And again, I normally want to get rid of the smaller one. That way I can just go ahead and subtract it from here. So, that's gone. Subtract 2x. I now have 6x minus 14 is equal to 4. And again, at this point, it becomes a 2-step equation. So I'm going to add or subtract. In this case, this is a subtraction. So I'm going to undo that. So I get to add 14. Add 14, I now have 6x is equal to 18. And at this point, it becomes pretty easy because you can just kind of figure out 6 times what is 18. We're going to go ahead and algebraically solve this. So divide both sides by 6 because I'm doing the inverse operation on here. So x is going to give me 3. Alright, we got 2 more to work on. let's start on this one right here. So here we have a similar type of problem, except this time I see a negative number on the outside. We're going to go ahead and deal with it this way. So again, I'm going to rewrite 3n minus 5, and I'm going to distribute the negative 8 to 6, which will give me negative 48. Then I'm going to distribute the 8 to the positive 5n, which will give me negative 40n. This is a very, very important part that you need to remember about that whole negative 8, or negative anything on the outside of that parentheses, just because you are distributing that to both terms, and that it does change the sign of both numbers inside. So now I have this, I get to go ahead and isolate your variable, because we're done distributing. We have nothing to combine. So I'm going to take the negative 40n. To make things easier, I'm going to go ahead and move it over to this side. So I'm going to go ahead and add 40n. I'm going to add 40n. So what I have here is that's gone. I now have 43n minus 5 is equal to negative 48. Now my next step here is, again, we're going to finish up isolating a variable. We're going to add or subtract. Since it's a minus 5, I'm going to inverse of that, which is to add 5. Add 5. I now have 43n is equal to negative 43. Let me just take this up over here. 43n is equal to negative 43. Because that is 43 times n, I'm going to use the inverse operation in this one and divide by 43. That gives me 1. Divide this by 43. N is equal to negative 43 divided by 43 is negative 1. And again, I can always place this back into any part of these. This equation right here, or directly back, and I should have the same type of answer. Alright, our last question here. Our first step is look for like terms. Let's go and solve that. And again, minus 4x minus 8x, that gives me negative 12x. Our second step here, we can go ahead and distribute. So here I'm going to have 5 into here, which will be negative 40x, 5 into here, which is going to be negative 10. Now, just like what we did before with that negative up here, this is a minus 5, but we're going to take this entire thing and distribute. So we're going to take a negative 5 and distribute to that 1, which now becomes minus 5, or negative 5. We're going to distribute this to here, and that's going to give me negative 5 times negative 5, which is a positive 25x. So what we've done here is we've distributed and did our like terms all in one step. Now, let's go ahead and combine like terms again if we have any. So I'm going to go ahead and circle off. I have this right here. Notice that I did take that negative right here. And then I have that plus 25x. And then I also have a couple of constants. Okay, so let's go and put them together. These two right here is going to give me negative 15x. These two right here is going to give me minus 15. And that's going to be equal to negative 12x. Now, looking at these two numbers over here, I would probably get rid of the negative 15x just because when I move this over, it makes it a positive x, which is what we want. It's just easier. So I'm going to add 15x here, add 15x here. I now have minus 15, or negative 15. Here I have negative 12x plus 15x is going to give me 3x, positive because the 15 is larger. Then here it's just a basic, simple one-step equation. So because I have 3 times x, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, divide this by 3. My x is equal to negative 5. Alright, that's it.